Hello everyone! Welcome back to the Construction Approach to Animal Welfare and Training podcast. We are your host. I am Masa.
Hi everybody, and I'm Sean.
We hope that you're cuddled up with your animal companions and ready for this exciting episode.
That's right. And before we jump in, I just want to say it's nice to be back.
Yes.
I know we've been gone for a few months, but we've been doing some pretty fun big things. We actually presented at a couple of conferences and even held one of our own. And that actually brings us to our first announcement of the day.
That's right. The video on demand registration for the third annual CAAWT conference is still available. It's available until September 30th. So if you're interested in enjoy watching and learning the 5 presentations that we have done in the conference, please register. We'll put the link in the description below.
That's right. And the next announcement before we jump in today is that we are about to start our Introduction to the Science of Behavior classes, part 1 and 2 again.
That's right.
And they will be at a special price because we're actually setting these to be available to all of our CAAWT members later on with a special instructional package with it.
That's right. And following those part 1 and 2, we will be doing Intro to Science of Behavior class part 3 in December.
That's right. So we hope to see you all there.
That's right. In today's episode, we will be sharing our work with one of our shelter dog, Barry.
And before we get into Barry, I just want to spend a minute speaking a little bit about the conference that I had mentioned in the introduction that we were at and part of the reason why we've been gone for a few months. And the ABAI Conference is the Association for Behavior Analysis International. And they just recently had their annual conference. And we helped organize a group of, I think, 6 symposia that included, I think, like 16 presentations. And part of this group was Lisa Clifton Bumpus and her amazing team of trainers out at the San Francisco Zoo. And her and Amy have really gone through some awesome efforts to create a really cool constructional program that helps to teach trainers about the constructional approach and how to use it within their training to improve the lives of the animals that they're working with. And some of the presentations they showed were just jaw-dropping.
Yes.
They are doing things that I don't know I've ever seen in animal training before, and it just has created such a humane and heartwarming, interaction between the zookeepers and their animals there. And just a little bit, because I don't want to spend the whole show today talking about their presentations, but they are doing some really cool things where they're doing these medical procedures with these animals. And normally in most training sessions, you might see the animal come up to do the injection or do the medical procedure, and they will get food rewards for participating in that procedure. But if they choose to leave, they can leave, but they're not going to be getting that same food that they were to get from that trainer if they participated in that session. And there at the San Francisco Zoo, they're flipping that on the head. Basically, the animal can come get that food for doing the procedure, and they can also get that food for opting out, for leaning away. They can just look away and turn away and get the food, and they won't continue with the procedure. Or the animal can completely leave the area and go get those same food treats somewhere else, completely separate from that zookeeper and the medical equipment. And they got some amazing results. And I hope to spend some more time talking about this later, and hopefully we can explore a little bit more together what was in those presentations and how cool it really was.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So high five, Lisa, if you're listening, to you and your whole team.
Yes.
You guys were amazing, and I love your work.
Yes.
But let's go ahead and jump into Barry.
Barry!
And Barry is another, as you can probably tell, a very special, meaningful dog to Masa here.
Yeah, after Sammy. If you haven't listened to Sammy's episode, it's on episode 29. And the next dog that we're very passionate about is Barry.
And Barry is a big puppy.
Yes.
I've got my guesses to speculate, but just to paint the picture on how big this dog is, I think he's a mix between possibly maybe like a Rottweiler and a Newfoundland, because he is big. Yeah. He's, I think at this point, like closing in on 9 months old, so he's an older puppy, but he's a puppy still, and he's probably already like 100 pounds, maybe even a little bit more. When he stands up, he sees over the top of my head.
Yeah.
So he's a big dog.
Yeah, and the size of his paw, when I was interacting with him, I felt like I was petting a lion or a bear. And Barry, the name Barry, came from the kind of like bear, that sound, and then it's like a bear.
Yeah, and he's a beautiful dog too, and he's
Beautiful, yeah.
solid red coat and just handsome as can be. And he's that kind of dog that when people see him, they are enamored, like they are pulled to him. He's very big, very impressive, very beautiful. But he's a puppy. And it seems like he's not ever had the opportunity to learn how to actually interact with people. And I would actually say, if you watch two puppies, playing with each other, that he interacts with people like they're other puppies.
That's right. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it.
I mean, he's rolling you around and jumping on you and mouthing everywhere and just having a blast from his point of view. But he's a big dog, so those kinds of interactions can deter people from wanting to play and wanting to hang out with them. And this is actually where we came in, because Barry's not been at the shelter at this point too terribly long.
Yeah, less than a month, I think. 2 weeks.
But his sheer size and the amount of attention that he's commanding from everybody, it really has brought some urgency to the need to help this puppy. That way these jumpy and mouthy behaviors don't get worse as he ends up becoming a 150-pound, dog later on. And so we really wanted to get in there, and that's where we're actually at right now, is getting in there and working with Barry to help teach him some better ways, we can say, to ask for and receive attention from the people that he wants to interact with. And so we soon got our first interaction with Barry. And we interact with Barry in the meet and greet area because we want our training to be as effective and meaningful for the dogs as possible. And since the meet and greet area is where they're going to be spending the most amount of time interacting with their potential adopters, we want to make sure that we do a large amount of our training in that area. And Barry, when we first got to meet him, Masa and I were in the yard together. And we already knew Barry was a really friendly dog. We had actually done some assessments there and also inside his enclosure at different parts when we were first getting to know him. And so when we first interacted inside this yard, he really, he kind of just came barreling towards us like a freight train. There's no better way to describe this. He came straight towards me at first, and he just did a couple of jumps. But then he was really interested in the yard. So he spent the next few moments just kind of pacing around the yard, peeing on the tree, peeing on the tunnel, peeing on the fence, and doing what dogs do. Yeah. But then he looked back at me and and he turned it back on, coming right at me. And, it's not an unfamiliar place for me to be, where dogs jumping all over and I'm getting drooled all over and mouthed and pawed at. And, these are things that I'm familiar and I'm comfortable with. However, Barry's consistency at it, his persistence at it, and his sheer size, I can totally understand why people who had interacted with him in the past had felt overwhelmed with his behavior. Because, even it being playful, it's like being played with by a grizzly bear, like you were mentioning earlier. He's like a bear. There is no enjoyable being played around with a grizzly bear. Him just swinging his butt around and stepping around and stepping on you and stuff. It has costs. Right. He's a large animal, and it really makes it, in my eyes, it's almost unfair. Because a Chihuahua, or a Jack Russell, a 20-pound or less dog even, these kinds of behaviors are almost seen as cute and playful and fun and enjoyable. But boy, when that 100-pound dog does those same things, it takes on a whole different meaning for us. And so to help Barry, because most people are probably not going to want that kind of an interaction, we needed to start doing the interaction guidelines to teach him what to do. But an interesting thing, Barry interacted with me, it was very rough, like I just described. He was jumping all over the place, slapping me with his huge paws.
Yeah, very huge.
Mouthing all over the place, stepping on me, swinging around, knocking me over with his butt. He was doing those things, but he actually did a couple of different things with Masa and also the other people with long hair, we should say, when in that meet and greet area. Do you want to describe your experience?
Yes. So when he jumps, and then I had, how to call it? I had
ponytail.
Ponytail. Yeah, I had a ponytail, and he would grab the ponytail with his mouth, and then I will have to be kind of facing back to him because I try to get my hair ready so that I can set up the environment so that he will less likely to do it. But at the same time, he knocked my glasses. I had to, So that couple of incidents happened.
It's chaos.
Yeah, it was pretty chaos. On top of jumping and a little mouthing, and his face, he's jumping and then having his face right in front of
right to you.
My face, that cute face. Yeah, So that was logistically, I had to really prepare to make sure that won't happen. So
and I can't describe how much fun we actually had during all of this.
Well, I really wanted to interact with him for a week, and then the fact that Barry is there right in front of me, I had fun.
But also to give, although we were enjoying, and we'll talk more about why it was more enjoyable for us, reflecting back on it here in a moment, but I also want to describe another level of that intensity that this behavior kind of occurred at, because it seemed like anyone that had their back towards Barry and had long hair,
right,
he was coming towards you.
Right.
Like that for him was like the ultimate green light to go in and get your interaction, was to jump on your back and to grab that long hair.
Right.
But boy, describing it now like I just did, I bet you all can understand like the it's a problem behavior to us, but it's not a problem to Barry. I mean, for Barry, that was a very successful behavior at getting interaction from people, because boy, try to ignore, that 100-pound puppy on your back chewing on your hair.
No.
And so Barry was doing these behaviors, as we saw through our assessment, very much motivated to get attention from us. And so being that we know what it is that Barry wants constant interaction and play from people. And what we want is Barry to keep all four of his paws on the ground, sit and lie down. We can give Barry exactly what he wants for engaging in the behaviors that we're looking for.
Exactly. And then that leads to him, if he learned those behaviors, that leads to more likely that he's going to get adopted. Mm-hmm. So it's win-win for everybody.
So we immediately, got to work with Barry to start helping to teach him these things. And, we found out really, really quickly that he was very sensitive to hands approaching anywhere near his head or neck.
That's right.
And, we don't know Barry's history, because before he arrived at the shelter, it's a big question mark. Even for dogs who actually, we get the pleasure of having like some kind of report from the humans that had surrendered them. Even those reports might be tainted with, different perceptions of how it might look if they were to tell the true story. And so we can't always bank on those reports, from the people that are surrendering the dogs to be extremely accurate, or even necessarily what we're going to experience in this new setting. Mm-hmm. So it's, dogs are kind of always a blank slate, except for that moment that we're there with them.
Yeah, we always have to ask the dog.
Exactly. And so, there's we can speculate on the hundreds of reasons why a dog might be sensitive to hands approaching their head or neck area. But the important thing is that when we brought our hands to those areas, it almost 1-to-1, like every time, elicited, mouthing.
Yeah, jumping.
Yeah, mouthing, jumping. It like turned on basically these crazy Barry behaviors. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that, we know that that's not the best place to start, to allow him to come into contact with the kinds of reinforcers that he might really enjoy from people. And so It was really funny because in the video, I'll see one day if we can get a good edit of this thing, completed and put out so everyone can watch it. But he's starting to jump and mouth on me quite a bit. And she spots it. She's like, don't pat him around the head and neck right now. You hear her shout at me. Yeah. And then I look over and I was like, wow, she's right. Like every time, because there were moments when he was actually, you'll see in the video, just standing there so cute, so calm. And I'm sitting there petting his side, petting on his hip a little bit, getting on the inside of his leg and rubbing him. And he's just soaking it up. But then my hands get to his neck and to his head.
Yeah.
And boy,
crazy
Barry turns on.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge thing that, you pointed out, Masa, to me when I was interacting with him. If petting around the head right now is too much for him, pet where you can pet him.
Exactly.
Allow him to get contact with that reinforcer, and then we can shape up to different spots of the body at that point.
Yeah. And this lesson really came from our study that we did with three rescue equine for my thesis.
Which is just published.
Published on the Journal of Experimental Analysis of Behavior. And then that's going to be in print in September. So coming very soon. Where in this study, because the size of the horses is huge, we allow the horse to move, offer different parts of the body that they find enjoyable and reinforcing for that moment. So our reinforcement system was made up so that it is very sensitive to the equine's behavior and then be able to offer whatever that they want at that moment, and so that we can shape with that thing. So I had that lesson from really you, Sean, and then Jesus. We have to be really sensitive to the animal's needs and wants. So I had that repertoire, and then Barry reinforced that concept or philosophy at that moment, because when I was trying to reach out to his face or neck, he would start that, like, I can see her face now, like his face now. Oh, this is a precursor for mouthing and jumping. So I had to find the place that he find it reinforcing. And when we learn about the Ogden work about conjugate reinforcement schedule, which is what we're using in the interaction guideline, I always have the question, how can we deliver affection or petting conjugately at that moment? Where does he find maximum, the value or the maximum, the full affection? Yeah. And as I was experimenting based according to Barry's behavior, like you said, the hip area or inside leg, he loved it. And the duration of standing with all 4 feet on the ground increased, like shoot the roof, based on the location of where you pet. So that was amazing to discover with Barry.
Yeah. No, and that was really our key, because in this next couple of minutes of just interacting, because at this point he was bouncing between Masa and I, behaving like this, where Masa and I would both awoken to this reality. Yeah. And so we're both petting where we know that Barry enjoys it and is staying with us in the way that we like. And he's just taking turns between the two of us. And he very quickly, within probably a couple of minutes, I need to go back and watch the video, but it was really fast, much like Sammy and Carmel, where next thing you know, he's just laying with Masa. They're both sitting on the floor together, and she's just beaming. You can see Masa with a smile from like ear to ear, just soaking up the love with Barry, this dog that had been at the shelter for a couple of our visits that we hadn't gotten an opportunity to interact with, that she was finally getting to share some good affection with. So like I was petting his inside his leg and kind of massaging and petting, and then he started sitting, and then he laid down. That really, he was maximizing. Oh, he was like, I feel like he was learning, how can I get this affection longer and maximize the amount and duration? And when he was laying, like, this is a dog, but like I said in the beginning, I felt like I was petting a bear. He was soft, and he was looking at me with lots of drool from his mouth. That was amazing. Yeah. And one funny thing too about Barry is, during this interaction, we actually had our GoPro set up on the table. Yeah. We can share this maybe soon too, because Barry, he like goes over to the table, and he sees the camera, and he literally like picks it up and starts running around the yard with it. And our GoPro was in like a protective case, so we weren't like panicking, like, gotta get the camera.
Yeah.
Barry was like filming the yard himself, and then he even took it over to the swimming pool and plunk, dropped it in there.
Yeah, we found out that he loved water and the pool, and that was fun.
But this was a really big moment for us, though, getting Barry to this point of laying down with you.
Right.
That was really monumental. That was something that Barry had not experienced likely. And, who knows how long it might have been since Barry had had an interaction with a human like that. And it was a really big moment. So we took pictures of it, and we shared it with our friends at the shelter that we love to hang out with and talk to all the time. And next time we come up there to work with Barry, these shelter people that we hang out with, they all came outside and wanted to hang out and see what was happening here. Like, how come the interaction with Barry and us was so different than what Barry was demonstrating with everybody else? And so this was a lot of fun, because this one shelter person that we love, if you're listening out there, big hug to you.
Yes.
But, she was telling us, like, every interaction, it's just been like what we were describing, like complete chaos. And this person is probably one of the most passionate, like, animal lovers I've probably ever met, and a true perfect person for a shelter. And so she comes into the yard and starts interacting with them, and Maz and I start guiding her, and before you know it, she's just hanging out in a chair, sitting there, petting on Barry, getting some really, really good affection in with him.
And Barry is sitting right next to her.
Right next to her.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. And being that the rest of the shelter staff were all there, or many of them were there, just kind of standing there watching, seeing how it was going down. It was a cool moment, because it allowed everyone to see that, we can have these good interactions with Barry still. We can keep him on this good path to getting adopted if we just tweak a little bit of the way that we approach these kinds of special challenge dogs, we should say.
Yes. Yes. And one of the things that you always say, Sean, is that interaction guideline is a guideline. It's something that we have to be applying it and then listening to the dog's behavior, current relevant repertoire of the dog, and then we have to tweak a little bit. And in this case with Barry, we had to tweak it. Otherwise, we will reinforce those chaotic, crazy behavior. If we try to reach out to him on the face and neck, we will not get to the point that he will get sitting and laying down. So we have to tweak the way that we deliver affection, the location or the duration.
Yeah, and I would say you might get where you want to go.
That's right, exactly,
going that way, but it's probably going to be more painful and costly for us and the dog, going there, because there's going to be a lot more room for error if we try and work where all of the instructions are already telling the dog to mouth. So if we see that that's the case, then let's go to the area where it's not telling the dog to mouth.
Exactly.
And we'll start working from there. A quick shameless plug for our conference. This was actually really the heart of Dr. Jesus Rosales Ruiz's amazing talk at our CAAWT conference this year. His talk was called Don't Fight Extinction. And it was predicated on this very thing, that whenever we're in a situation that is telling our animal to behave in a way that we find undesirable, to not try and force new behavior right there in that situation, to go to a new place, to set a new environment somehow that will not be giving those same instructions, where we can start building the good behavior that we want and then slowly change the environment back to the condition where we need it. And so that's an amazing talk. Please come check it out on the website if you find this kind of a topic interesting. But it was a monumental thing for Barry, and that was the exact thing that allowed us in such a fast amount of time to get to the goal that we were looking for. Because we didn't just sit there and focus on the head and the mouth and neck right there.
Right. And then on the second visit, we spent about an hour with him.
Yeah, that was fun.
That's another progress. Being able to spend an hour with him in the meet and greet area, that's another big progress too.
He was playing and interacting the whole time.
Exactly. And then we started petting around the inside the leg and then the hip area. But then as Barry learned how to ask for and receive affection from us, we could start to pet towards the neck and then the face. So we're not saying that don't pet, like try to always focus on the hip area. No, we want to start there, but gradually extend the location so that the dog is finding reinforcing. And then we're keeping and transferring a good behavior.
Yeah, and a big clue we had, too, that he was warming up and getting ready for that kind of a step was that whenever he was, like, going away to, like, go potty for a moment, whenever he would turn back to us, Moss and I would always offer our hands. That's a way that we always tell dogs, hey, you know, I got some loving for you. And he would actually start to come up and put his head in our hands.
Exactly.
And so at that point, it's really hard to deny, you know, him the affection right there where he's basically asking for it by virtue of how that reinforcement system was set, by how we did the interaction guidelines to teach him how to ask for and receive that affection.
Exactly.
But a really cool thing did happen also at the end of that second session. So we're hanging out, just enjoying Barry, really having a great time with him. And like Moss and I also, we had no idea that we had spent so much time with him. We were just having so much fun before we knew it, like the afternoon was gone. But this really nice car pulls up into the parking lot, and this fella gets out of the car, and it didn't surprise me, you know, because like I said, Barry is this large, beautiful, you know, magnet dog. People see him and want to come to him to check him out. And so this individual comes like right over to the fence. But as he gets to the fence, he starts calling Barry's name.
Yeah.
So he had been coming up to the shelter for a few days and had seen Barry in his enclosure and had fallen in love with Barry and has been continually coming to the shelter to see him. But he caught Barry out in the yard with us. And he saw the way that we were interacting with him, and he really enjoyed it. And so we showed him, you know, the places that we were petting and things like that. And he actually even had a handful of treats in his pocket that he had specifically brought to give Barry. But it was nice because they got to have a really nice interaction there through the fence. Barry wasn't yet cleared at this point, you know, to start being promoted as an adoptable dog just yet. So they haven't gotten a chance to interact, but you know, we will soon. And after we get that opportunity to work with this individual and Barry together, we'll come back and give you guys an update on where Barry is.
Yes.
And we hope that you enjoyed our story of Barry today, and we'll have some more updates on him and other dogs that we're working with in the shelter for you soon. But I just wanted to take a moment to talk to everybody for just a second about leash walking. And we had done an episode back on, I think it was like episode 8 or 9 or something like that, where I had actually presented a stop and go inspired like approach that we had talked about in that episode. And for that episode, I had actually uploaded a video to our Patreon page. And by the way, we aren't really active on that Patreon page anymore. We're looking at actually getting rid of that. So if you're looking for more information or wanting to, you know, get involved with us and our podcast more, please just visit us at our website at caawt.com. You can get involved with our membership, and there's a whole lot more that we can offer you guys through the membership than on the Patreon page, so we're kind of shifting away. But getting back on track, on that Patreon page, we had uploaded a video of us using that stop and go method with our dog Chew. And you know, it worked for the moment, and you know, it got the kinds of outcomes that we would expect, but I didn't enjoy doing it. It didn't feel good to me. And it's because with Chew in particular, he was just so, you know, so desiring to get to all of these things that were outside that it just involved a whole lot of extinction. Because since he was wanting to get over there and he was really persistent, it took a lot of extinction to get to the point where we could begin walking forward again. And so what I wanted to tease you guys with is that in our next episode, I want to actually talk to you guys about a constructional leash walking program that Moss and I have been spending the last 2 years developing. And the cool thing here is that it involves an application of a conjugate reinforcement schedule, much like the interaction guidelines, to teach our dogs how to actually walk on leash with us together. So it's a really easy, just 4 guidelines approach, much like the interaction guidelines. that so far we have presented this to our CAAWT members, and many of them have been applying it, and it's been getting some extraordinary results with them, with the dogs we work with in the shelters, with Chew. And so it's been so far a really amazing experience getting the procedure to where it is right now. And I look forward to sharing it all with you in our next podcast episode. But if you'd like to learn more and like to get a head start applying this and maybe getting some support and feedback from the constructional community, please join us in our CAAWT membership, and you can find information on that at our website, caawt.com, and we'll also put a link in the description of this podcast.
And this marks the end of today's episode. We hope you enjoyed listening to our work with Barry. Also, we made a video on Sammy's journey, which you can watch it on our YouTube channel, CAAWT, and also on our Instagram. We uploaded Ken Ramirez's Bailey interview on the YouTube channel as well, so please enjoy them all whenever you have time. And if you're interested, register for the video on demand to enjoy the 5 presentations given at the 3rd Annual Constructional Approach to Animal Welfare and Training Conference. We will put the link in the description below. And stay tuned for the upcoming series of group classes on our website and our social media. If you like our show, please subscribe to our podcast or share it with your friend. And feel free to get more information or reach out to us on our website, caawt.com, or our Facebook page, Constructional Approach to Animal Welfare and Training. Instagram at NPO_CAAWT, or you can always email us at caawtcontact@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us today. We are your host. I am Masa.
And I'm Sean.
Have a wonderful day with your amazing animal companions.